Hey, welcome back to Computer Programming Basics. In this video, we're looking at the concept of objects. Now, the term object has slightly different meaning in different programming languages and paradigms, but the concept that we'll be looking at is pretty consistently available in most modern computer programming languages. In the last video, we looked at the idea of a variable, and a variable, of course, is a named container to store information in a computer program. You may have noticed in the exercise that we had different types of values that we were storing in our variables. For example, we have the default sleep time variable. In that name container, we stored a value that was a number, 1000. But notice the difference between the 1000 and then the red on the next line in the color1 variable. They're both values, but red is surrounded by quotation marks. Won't go into too much details, but values that are surrounded by quotation marks are called in computer programming languages a string. It's just a sequence of characters that are not actually evaluated or processed or tried to be read by the computer programming language when it's interpreting it all the way down to ones and zeros. And so this red value is a different type of value from the number. That's the most important point. There are different types of values in addition to numbers and strings. What we'll be looking at in this video is another type of value, namely an object. In this context, an object is a type of value that holds other values. That's confusing. So let me try and make it a little clearer. If we have to store a XY coordinate point for a graph, there are two values, two coordinates that make up that point. We could store that in our program using an X variable with a value of 5 and a separate Y variable with a value of 2. Two variables, two values make sense. However, it would be much more convenient for us if we store these closely related values in one variable. It would be easier for us when we're passing it to other functions, when we're saving it, maybe even changing it. We could keep better track of the values because they're so closely related. In that case, we can use an object. An object version of this would look like this. We have a point variable, single variable, that instead of its value being a single number, its value is an object. And this object has within it two values. Now, when the values are within the object, we don't refer to them as variables per se. That could be a little confusing, you can imagine. We refer to them as properties. And so we would say that this object has two properties, an X property with a value of 5 and a Y property with a value of 2. These two very closely related values are being stored in this object, and the object is being stored in the point variable. So let's jump right into the exercise. In our program, we have the avatar. The avatar has certain properties. It has an X coordinate and a Y coordinate that it is at any point in time during the program. The avatar also has a color. These are three closely related values. Wouldn't it be nice if instead of sending them around in our program separately as three different variables, we could have them closely connected in one variable? Aha! We use an object. And so that's what we'll be doing in the exercise. We'll be taking what we've been doing before and combining those variables into one variable, the avatar variable. To do this, you're going to have to understand a little bit of our syntax. That is some of the rules in our language that we're using. The underlying language we're using here is called JavaScript. And so in JavaScript, objects are defined as you've seen so far on the screen. You have an opening curly brace and a closing curly brace. And within those two curly braces are all the definitions of our object. Properties are defined as key and value pairs. The key, X, goes on the left side of a colon, and the value 5 goes on the right side of the colon. Then to specify that you're going to a second property or another property, you need to add a comma after the previous property. So we have open curly brace, x colon 5, comma, y colon 2. In this case, we're putting them on separate lines. You don't have to worry about the new lines, whether this was all on one long line, as you see here, or if this is broken out on separate lines, it will still be the same. You may notice that having it broken out on separate lines makes it a little easier to read, and so that's why that's generally the practice that we use as a convention in our programming languages. So this is what it looks like as an example. What you need to do, as you'll see in the exercise, is take all of those variables and combine them in the object, the avatar object. Secondly, how do we access the values that are stored within our object? Instead of just saying X or Y or avatar color, we need to now specify that we're using the properties that are inside of this object. And so you see how we do it. We do avatar, which is the variable that is holding this object, that we're storing this object, avatar dot, and then we put the name of the property we like to access. Avatar dot X, avatar dot Y, avatar dot color, and that is how we access those values. All right, jump into it. I hope you figure it out. Hope you enjoy it, and I can't wait to see you back here next time in Computer Programming Basics. Thanks for watching.